ranking the top 15 defensive ends in the 2025 NFL Draft. There are more edge rushers in the top 100 players of this year's draft than any other position by far. We could see more defensive ends drafted in the first 3 rounds than we have in the last 50 plus years. Or we could see some talented pass rushers fall to day 3. Today, I'm going to cover the top 15 edge rushers in this year's draft class, starting off with ranks 15 to 11, and then I'll go player by player for the top 10. These guys are pretty much considered my honorable mention here. Starting out at number 15, I have Ole Miss pass rusher Jared Ivey, a guy who should go on day 2 of the NFL draft, followed up by Ohio State star JT Tuimoloau, a guy I've watched for years, and honestly, I really love his game. At number 13, Michigan's Josiah Stewart is falling down boards a bit, but still has a ton of talent. And then having South Carolina's Kyle Kennard ranked all the way down at number 12 tells you just how talented this edge rusher class really is. Kennard should be able to contribute immediately on pass rush downs. And then at number 11, just missing the top 10, is Landon Jackson from Arkansas, who had an awesome week at the NFL Combine and looks like he could be a borderline first round pick. When you have guys with first round talent who didn't even make the top 10 at the position, that shows you it's an incredible year for pass rushers. I also did not include Oregon's Jordan Burch in my top 10. I had him included in my defensive tackle video, but he's a guy who could play at either position and would have made the top 10 at either spot. Okay, so now it's time to get into the nitty gritty. The top 10 edge rushers in the 2025 NFL Draft. Checking in at number 10 is Ohio State's Jack Sawyer, a guy who was pivotal in Ohio State's national championship run. You might remember his game-changing play in the playoff semifinal. With just a 7-point lead and 2.5 minutes left in the game, Texas was 17 yards away from tying the game and having a shot to advance to the national championship. Instead, it was Jack Sawyer who destroyed Texas's right tackle, forcing a Quinn Ewers fumble, and then he would pick it up and rumble 83 yards for a fumble recovery touchdown. This sealed the game and led Ohio State to a national championship victory. Sawyer is described not only as a locker room leader, but a culture setter who could help change the identity in a locker room. He has the rare combination of size, power, football IQ, and advanced technique to make him an instant contributor in the NFL. While he may not have the 15 sack upside of some of the other guys, he profiles as a long-term starter who should help out from day one. At number 9 is Texas A&M's Nick Scourton, a guy who's a testament of the strength at this position. A year ago, scouts viewed him as a top 10 pick and the best edge rusher in this class. Fast forward a season and he's my number 9 defensive end for the 25 draft. From being the number 1 DE to not even being the top edge rusher on his own team, what happened with Scourton? After bursting onto the scene with 10 sacks at Purdue in 2023, Scourton would hit the transfer portal and join Shamar Stewart and Shamar Turner in what was supposed to be a dominating D-line at Texas A&M, but they underperformed, recording just 25 total sacks on the year, led by Scourton's 5, still only half of what he recorded last year at Purdue. To me, he's still a first-round prospect, but he's fallen victim to the insane talent at defensive end this season. If Scourton would have went back to school for one more year, he could have been a top 10 pick next season. At number 8 is a personal favorite of mine, Ole Miss's Princely Umanamilayan, an absolutely electric pass rusher that simply jumps off of the tape. Even on a defensive line that featured Walter Nolan and Jared Ivey, he still managed to stand out. Princely is an impact pass rusher who saves his best for third downs and big moments of games. After transferring from Florida, he helped Ole Miss set school records for sacks and tackles for loss this season. 52 total sacks and 120 tackles for loss. Princely played a huge part of that. With elite burst off the line of scrimmage and a solid bag of pass rush moves, he has the tools to develop into a 15 plus sack a season guy and be one of the best pass rushers in this entire class. To me, Princely is a first round talent who could fall to day two just due to the sheer talent of this year's edge rusher class. Keep an eye out for Princely Umon Malayan. At number 7 is a guy who led the nation in sacks this season with 17. Boston College's Donovan Izaraku. He's 6'2", 248, and a guy who's probably going to start off in the NFL as a pass rush specialist. But he has possibly the most advanced set of pass rush moves in the entire class. He's explosive and relentless as a pass rusher. He has elite first step quickness, and he always has a pass rush plan to get to the quarterback. He's a pass rusher with a ton of upside who should be able to get after quarterbacks immediately, but needs to develop into a three-down player. At number 6 is a guy who just set the definition of athletic freak at this position. He compares side by side physically and athletically to Myles Garrett, but he has not come close to matching that kind of production. Texas A&M's Shamar Stewart tested off the charts in Indy, scoring a perfect 10.0 on his RAS score. So much fuss is being made about his lack of production, but nobody mentions that he only started 7 games in his entire college career. This is a guy who's still developing, and despite finishing his career with just 4.5 sacks, he has all the physical tools and traits you look for in a pass rusher, and he displayed an ability to constantly disrupt plays in 2024. Even though he didn't finish off his sacks, he had 39 pressures, and he needs to be drafted by a team that takes his development seriously. Not only was he the talk of the combine, but he also dominated at the Senior Bowl as well. There was a series during 7-on-7 drills where Shamar would have had 3 straight sacks. His week of practice was so dominant that he left early and skipped the game. This is a guy that is still developing, but he can be molded into a disruptive pass rusher at the next level. He can stick outside at edge or can be developed into a 3-tech and moved inside. He's likely to be overdrafted based on his upside and traits, but the team that drafts him needs to be patient. At number 5 is a guy who exploded onto the national spotlight by having an incredible game on national TV against Ohio State this season. Mike Green from Marshall is another guy who was a standout at the Senior Bowl, and you just have to love his tape. All his life, he's heard that he's too small. His arms are too short, his hands are too small, etc., etc. He will always lack ideal height, weight, and length in the NFL, but he has the most advanced set of pass rush moves in this entire class, and he always gives ultimate effort. He never quits and always has a plan to get to the QB. He had 100 plus pressures and 24 sacks, and this is a guy who profiles as an immediate impact player in the NFL. His biggest question is how he will hold up against the run, but Mike Green is a lock to go in the first round. At number 4 is the first of a pair of Georgia teammates on the D-line, a guy who fits the mold of a prototype edge rusher that NFL teams look for. Michael Williams, a 6'5", 260-pound, twitched-up athlete with all the physical traits you look for in an edge rusher. He has insane power, he plays with violent hands, and he has rare length and athleticism for the position. 34-plus-inch arms, and all the physical traits you want in a defensive end. Unfortunately, his tape in 2024 does not match his talent, as he put up some inconsistent play this season. It's most likely due to him suffering a high ankle sprain early in the season. He played through it all year, but he's still a force against the run. He's a guy who's still developing as a pass rusher, but he has Pro Bowl upside and is a lock to go in the first round of April's draft. Michael Williams reminds me a bit of Miles Murphy out of Clemson from a couple years ago. Depending on where he goes, he could be an impact player right away. At number 3, I have Tennessee's edge rusher James Pierce Jr., a guy who put on an absolute show at the NFL Combine, running a 4.47 40 at 245 pounds while wearing a hoodie. He has insane burst off the line of scrimmage. His first step quickness makes a lot of tackles look silly. Pierce possesses rare bend around the edge that NFL GMs covet. He also sets the edge well and plays the run better than his size would indicate. Pierce has all the tools you look for in a first round pick who should contribute immediately at the next level. His 10 plus sack upside should lead to him hearing his name very early on draft day. He's a freak of an athlete who has 18 sacks over the last 2 years. James Pierce Jr. should be a lock to go in the top 15. At number 2, I have one of the toughest guys to rank in this year's entire draft. He's undersized and he needs to add bulk in the NFL, but he has as much potential as any other player in this year's draft, except for maybe the guy I have at number 1. They are actually similar players in style who both move around the defense, spy quarterbacks, and play off ball linebacker, but specialize at rushing the quarterback. Georgia allowed Jalen Walker to start his career as a situational pass rusher the last 2 seasons while he was bulking up and developing. This year, Walker was allowed to play full time at edge, and he was the best player on Georgia's defense and a true difference maker at the college level. Some scouts say if you give Walker 2 years in an NFL weight room, he can be the best player on a team's defense, but he has to go to the right scheme and get with the coaching staff that best knows how to utilize his unique skill set. This season, Jalen Walker was all over that defense. He had 61 total tackles, 6.5 sacks, as well as 2 fumble recoveries. He does come with significant risk. He's 6'1", 243, and needs to be moved around the defensive line. He's not a guy that you can just put at defensive end and leave him there and hope he gets 10 sacks. He needs to start his career as a situational pass rusher, let him do what he does best, get after the quarterback, and then let him develop into the difference maker that he is underneath. He needs to spend time in an NFL weight room. But Jalen Walker is one of the biggest wild cards in this draft and easily the hardest player to rank. But I could see him going in the top 10 of this draft. At number 1, to no surprise of anyone, is Penn State's Abdul Carter, the absolutely electrifying edge rusher from Penn State. At 6'3", 250 pounds, who's been timed running a 4.4 40, he has insane burst off the line of scrimmage and rare bend around the edge. He has every single physical gift you could look for, and he's capable of taking over games at any moment. Carter is a guy that offensive coordinators have to game plan for, a force multiplier on defense who is capable of wrecking offensive game plans. He started his career at Penn State playing off-ball linebacker and waiting patiently behind guys like Chop Robinson and Adiza Isaac, who both moved on to the NFL last season. Carter recorded 12 sacks in 2 years as a linebacker and then put it all together this season and got 12 more sacks as an edge rusher. Carter is my number 1 player not only at defensive end, but in this entire draft. He did not work out at the combine. His doctors found a small stress fracture in his right foot. After getting second opinions, Carter opted to not have surgery. The hope is he'll be 100% by his pro day later this month, and he plans to work out for teams there. He is an absolute difference maker on the defensive line and should be a lock to go in the top 5 of this draft. And those are my top 15 edge rushers in this year's insanely talented defensive line class. I've been studying the NFL draft for 20 plus years now, and this is one of, if not, the most talented defensive line classes I have ever seen. The bottom line is this is a perfect offseason for any team that's looking for help on their defensive line, especially edge rushers and defensive ends. I did not plan on finishing this video yet, but so many of you watched my defensive tackle ranking video that I decided to get to work on this immediately, staying up late watching film and trying to get these rankings done. If you missed my D-tackle rankings, check those out. As long as you guys keep watching, I'll keep bringing the content. Next up, I plan on breaking down the generational running back class. Let me know in the comments what position you would like to see ranked. Hit the like button for me to support the channel and stay tuned for more.